Mike, check 1 2 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and there is a painful but also pleasant truth about video game collecting in 2024. And I kind of want to go through both sides of it, just because we're halfway through September. We have about one more or less than a week of official summer before we go into spring. Sorry, hear me, spring. Sorry, fall. And this is around the time where people start to shift how they collect and where they source their games from, because it's not as easy to go to like the mom and pop shops. Flea markets start to slow down, all that type of stuff. And you've heard me say this before, but as I go through just looking at different message boards and Reddit threads and just watching different videos and even on my own videos, I'm just seeing a mix of opinions when it comes to video game collecting and retro collecting. And like I said, there is a painful truth about collecting and there's a pleasant truth about collecting, and I'll go through it. Let's go through the pleasant part first. So the pleasant part about video game collecting in 2024 is that today we have a lot more viable alternatives to be able to collect games and play them without necessarily having to pirate them or emulate them, and things of that nature. Because a lot of the companies that created a lot of these older games have made better ways for us to enjoy these games and enjoy them in a much more higher quality fashion. So, two examples that I present are first the Geo Mini, and I've talked about this so many times on my channel because I think this is one of the best mini consoles that we have today. And I say that because this is a mini console that gives you access to literally thousands of dollars worth of games and allows you to play them in HD, full screen, great sound. This is a truly underrated mini, and I think people underrate it because this mini console wasn't made in the form of like a mini Neo Geo AES. I think had Neo Geo created this and just replicated it to look like a mini AES console, I think not only would this have sold a lot more, but I think this would have had a way higher resale value, because this mini console, like the last time I checked, this goes for like $30, right? I picked this up because it carries a lot of my favorite Neo Geo games, one of which is Blazing Star. And for those of you who know, Blazing Star is an extremely expensive shoot 'em up on the Neo Geo. I would never pay the going rate for a copy of Blazing Star. Well, for one, it's extremely hard to even find a legit copy. Like there's so many reproduction copies of the game, it's like not even funny. And then when you do find a legit copy, it's thousands of dollars. Not only that, you have the original Metal Slug on here, which is again a game that is worth thousands of dollars, along with Sengoku 3, which I think is an amazing hack and slash style beat 'em up game. Again, thousands of dollars. So, you know, I'd say easily there's about 20,000 or more. Somebody can let me know if all you mathematicians out there, let me know. But there's probably upwards of $20,000 worth of games packed into this little mini console. And the good thing is that it's licensed by SNK, so you don't have to worry about, the whole pirating deal. You're still supporting SNK. This is a licensed product. It does have a lot of really cool accessories that go along with it. If you want to play it using this little mini arcade control here, you can do that. There's also a like a replica Neo Geo CD controller that you can use with it as well, like a D-pad. And I think there's also like an arcade stick that you can get, and all of those can be connected using this little USB-C port. So that's some of the pleasant that's the pleasant side of game collecting today, is that the advanced technology makes it easier for you to enjoy games, enjoy them in HD, right, with great sound, great picture quality. And I think that this is just a really cool example of how you can enjoy some of these games. And again, cheap, right? You don't have to break the bank, and instead of spending the thousands of dollars to collect all these games, you have them here in one nice, neat package. Another example of this and is the Sega Genesis Mini 2, and I've mentioned this before. Genesis Mini 2, I referenced this one as well because unlike the first Genesis Mini, the Genesis Mini 2 has way more of those hidden gem type of um, really expensive, like niche titles, those, really rare shoot 'em ups and beat 'em ups, hack and slash type games. A lot of those games are stored here on the Genesis Mini 2. This has a lot of Sega CD games on it. And for those of you who know, like the upper echelon of Sega CD games can also be very expensive, can run hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. So these two mini consoles here, you're talking about thousands of dollars in terms of software, right? But the good thing is that this software is licensed, you're not pirating anything, and you can enjoy this in picture perfect HD quality with the games taking up the full screen, and you can have a blast. The only downside to this is that if either one of these breaks, you lose all of your games, right? Because it's all in one. So if the unit gets damaged, say goodnight to all the games. Now you no longer have access to any of the games unless you buy another Sega Genesis Mini or you buy another Neo Geo Mini, and then you can play the games again. So that's the plus and minus with that. But these look like they were built pretty sturdy. And I think it would take a lot to really like destroy or damage these. I think these will probably hold up well. Um, you know, this isn't like 90s plastic, because that 90s plastic is like, stuff in the 90s is built like a tank, but this is still pretty good. So I would say that these two definitely bode well for modern retro collecting and modern retro gameplay. I think another benefit to if you're deciding to collect in 2024, you have companies that are putting out kind of like these modern retro classics like Gravity Circuit that will give you that retro feel. Is this a game that was actually released back in the 90s? I don't think so. But this is like a modern take on a lot of the games that we enjoyed back in the day. It kind of has that Mega Man, Shinobi type of feel. And we can enjoy a lot of these games because they're a lot more refined, right? The graphics are more refined, the gameplay, the movements, the weapons, the conversation, the dialogue, a lot of that's really updated. So I think this is the pleasant aspect of collecting video games today. When you factor, consoles like the Switch that has a huge selection of indie titles like Gravity Circuit, and then you factor in just all the minis and different ways that you can consume some of that retro stuff. I think that that bodes well for collectors today. You definitely have a lot of alternatives. Now, the painful part about collecting today, when you start to think about retro, and for me, like retro is really going to start at this point from 7th gen back. So, if you're trying to, well, before I go to the painful part, I'll just say one more thing that's pleasant for retro, because I think this actually bodes well for retro, is that 7th gen is now considered retro. And right now, we're kind of at that crossroads with 7th gen games where you can really stack up on 7th gen games and build that aspect of your retro collection for pennies on the dollar. The bulk of these games that you see here are $6 to $7 a piece on these PS3 games, right? A lot of them are between $6 and $10, and you've got a wide selection of games from fighters to horror action games, hack and slashers, open world style games, RPG games, really good stuff. So you can definitely take advantage there. The same thing with the 360, which is a part of the same generation. While you do have some more like pricier titles like the Spider-Man games, the Dynasty Warriors games, you still have a bunch of titles that are between $6 and $10. Soul Calibur, Elder Scrolls, Divinity, 99 Nights, Last Remnant, which is maybe like a $15 game. You still have a very wide selection of games that you can add to your collection, without necessarily breaking the bank. And if I were to start in 2024, I would definitely start with the PS3 360. You will find more of these games than anything else. And I would really start at 7th gen, and then I would just work my way back from there. Start with 7th, start looking for 6th, and start, and then just work your way back. Because as you're going to see, even in this small display, the further back you go in generations, the less product you're going to see. Because the next generation that you see here is 6th gen, which is really PS2 stuff. And while there is still a decent amount of 6th gen stuff floating around, a lot of all of these games were purchased at a mix of mom and pop game shops, thrift stores, and GameStop. These 1, 2, 3, 4 games were all GameStop pickups. They were all around $13 and under. These were two $5 pickups from a thrift store. I was able to pick up during a trade at a mom and pop video game store. So there's definitely ways that you can add to these games, and then you're still able to find 3DS titles, right, at GameStop, which is where I picked these up. So you definitely have that working well for you. And then speaking of 6th gen, you've got Dreamcast, which I put in the 6th generation. You're still able to find Dreamcast games out there in the wild. Surprisingly enough, you can still find that at GameStop. The thing is that when it comes to certain 6th gen consoles, the price starts to jump up a lot. You start moving out of the $5 to $10 range into the $25 and $30 range, and even $40 range, which is where a lot of these games like the GameCube, the 3DS, Dreamcast, a lot of these games start to fall into the $20 to $40 range, and things start to get really, really pricey. Then the further back you go, and then this is when the pain really starts. The pain really starts at Gen 5, Gen 5 and back. So once you start looking at things like PlayStation and Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, that's where things get really, really tricky and things start to get very, very pricey. And as a collector, you kind of have to know what exactly it is you're going for. I am a huge beat 'em up, run and gun shooter, action platformer type of guy. I've always been that type of guy. And unfortunately for me, a lot of games that fall within those genre happen to be either widely popular or widely expensive. So you kind of have to go into that knowing like, okay, I'm only going to be able to pick up a small number of these games either every 6 months or per month or whatever the case may be. It's easy to pick up a bunch of really cheap titles, but as you can see, there's only like 4 of the older titles, Gen 5 and Gen 4, one being Rapid Reload, Knights of the Round, and then Elisa Dragoon. Spider-Man is a little $10 game on the Game Boy. Game Boy games are typically pretty cheap. You do have some Game Boy games that can run you a bunch, but for the most part, these are going to be pretty cheap. So you kind of just have to go into it knowing that if you're looking for anything Gen 5 or older, there's gonna be some pain to your wallet. And in my opinion, one of the best ways to try and, balance some of that out is just finding some of these 6th and 7th gen games that you can possibly flip to be able to roll that money into some of these games. Now, someone asked me on one of my videos the other day about some of the lower end games that I purchased and how I'm able to use those games or parlay those games into purchasing, some of my more expensive titles. A lot of times when it comes to the cheaper games that I find, I usually typically try to buy them with some type of promotion. So like if you think about like even like these Dragon Ball Z games, most of these games in this row, if you buy them like during a 4 for 40 or a 4 under 10 for 20, even though these games are maybe like $20 to $25 games, you can pick them up for $5. I didn't pick these up for $5, but I did have, points, GameStop points and coupons that I was able to use that reduced the price of some of these games. So you kind of just, it's a little bit of like mental math and kind of knowing when to buy certain games and how to leverage your points and how to leverage your coupons and how to, flip some of the savings that you would get from maybe like a GameStop and use that to get games that maybe GameStop wouldn't buy, but maybe you have a game store near you that would buy them. And just knowing how to navigate it. I've mentioned this before. I think I've mentioned this guy before, but Easy Gamers. I feel like that Easy Gamers dude is kind of like a master at like playing the game. Like he knows how to he knows which games to trade locally. He knows which games to sell to GameStop. He knows which games to try and get from like a mom and pop shop. And so he kind of just plays all the different avenues against each other. Like he knows which game, like if he gets a haul, he knows where he's going to trade this, where he's going to trade that. And that's kind of how you have to be with some of like the mid to lower end stuff. That's really, I'm just talking strictly in terms of price. When you're starting to talk about like mid to lower tier games, that price wise, you kind of have to know like where you can sell, where you can flip, who you can trade with to maximize the value. And I think Easy Gamers is a great example of a dude who just knows how to maximize the value of every single game that he gets. Like no game gets wasted. It doesn't matter if he picks up a box full of rare gems or if he picks up a box of just a bunch of common games, he's going to squeeze every last cent of value out of that game. So I think if you're going to be a collector and if you want to start collecting in 2024, those are some of the habits that you're going to have to kind of build if you're trying to be as frugal as possible about it. Of course, if you have like disposable income and you have money that you can just kind of burn a little bit, then yeah, go out and buy a copy of Hagane. Like do that, if you've got the money to do it. Not everybody has it. And then a lot of the fun does come in the negotiating and the barter and the trade and the hunt. A lot of collectors find a lot of joy in that as well. So there's pain and there's pleasure in the hobby for sure. I think there's ways that you can enjoy it without having to deal with any of this nonsense. If you just want to play the games and have a solid collection of titles, get you some minis, get you some HDMI cables, have a blast. If you want to, have a variety of games, if you want to kind of, do the whole game hunting, trading thing, you can do that too. But there's going to be pleasure and pain on both sides of the spectrum when it comes to the hobby of collecting in 2024. I think you kind of have to figure out what it is you like, the types of games you like, and then just lock in on that. And then that I think will help you kind of set your course and chart your course for how you're going to navigate the hobby. But just a little quick touch point that I wanted to give to the Y2K crew. Let me know what you think down in the comments. What are some of the best ways to collect in 2024? What are some of, the better avenues to go down? I think September has been decent. I honestly didn't expect September to be this way. For me, in terms of these pickups, a lot of these were just things that I ran into at GameStop or at a thrift store. And a good chunk of these are definitely going into the collection. There's probably a good chunk of these that will be put up for trade or will be sold. But let me know what you think down in the comments. It's the Y2K Collector. Hopefully you're having a great week. Is it hump day yet or is it Tuesday? I'm not sure. It might be hump day. If it's hump day, happy hump day and enjoy the rest of the week. I'll catch you soon.